leading the Volunteerism Task Group of WAGGGS, which is situated in the Membership Growth Working Group. And together with me today is Helen Welsh from Girl Guiding UK and also from the Volunteerism Task Group, who has done a lot of work on volunteerism and also retaining and recruiting volunteers and also young adults. So I will be first giving you an introduction, a more general introduction to the team today, and then Helen will be going more in depth of the team. I'm so happy to see so many of you here with us today. Some names I recognize, some are new to me, and I'm sure you don't all know each other either. So we'd be happy to know. Please type in the chat box on the, I'm guessing on the right-hand side on your screen. Do tell, of course, your name that we can already see in the attendees list anyway, and the country and organization, which guide organization you're representing. So we'll have a little overview of who we have with us today. So the team today is retaining young adults, and here is a slide where you will see both Helen and myself. So we have also already facilitated 2 webinars previously on volunteerism, and we are very much interested and happy of sharing our knowledge and ideas with all of you, because, and the next slide please. Namely, there is a problem to be solved in WAGGGS, in guiding, in most of the guiding organizations worldwide. Namely, numbers of girls in guiding drop as they grow up. These numbers here shown on the screen are from UK, but I'm convinced that unfortunately very similar types of numbers would come up in most of the other countries and membership organizations. This is unfortunately the trend in WAGGGS, and this is precisely why we're here today, and this is precisely why WAGGGS is so determined in working on growth and organizing so that the numbers would not be dropping, but they would be actually growing. And that's why we need to really look into these numbers, what is behind them, because only when we identify the problem can we find the solutions. And here are some causes for these dropping numbers in the young adolescent age group. Between 12 and 16 years of age, typically the dropping numbers may be because of peer pressure. It simply might not be very cool and very nice to be a girl guide. Also school and exam pressure. These young girls and boys as well in some associations, they are having tremendous school and exam pressure already. They need to perform more and more in school. They simply might not have time for guiding. Also family pressures. For many reasons, girls of this age might not be able to join and keep on guiding anymore. There are many kinds of demands on their time, and also changing interests. At some point, girls just notice that guiding isn't their thing. And then if we look at the numbers from 17 to 18, things in the young people's lives can really change. But surprisingly, when you ask them and when you look at the reasons why they leave guiding, this is what they tell us. Peer pressure, school exam pressure, even more than previously. Family pressure, that might grow too. other demands on their time, for example, work. Children at this age might already be working, and definitely changing interest. This will continue when the girls grow older. And then let's still look at another age group, namely 18 to 25 years old. That's when things can change completely in their lives. At that point, many girls will leave home for work or building a career. They leave home for university and other study opportunities, maybe in another side of the country. They get married or have a significant relationship. The freedom of having money and as an adult having new interests and priorities. So certainly the old life with guiding might not be the thing that they are anymore interested in. And that's why there is something we need to do with these things. The funny thing is, when you look at these numbers, it's very similar, the reasons why these different age groups leave girl guiding. So the problems are very similar, so the solutions too shouldn't be that difficult in theory. So how can guiding respond? Because we must respond, we must grow, we must stop these declining numbers. And what we know for a fact, that a person most likely to volunteer as a leader is someone who has already had a great experience as a member, someone who has already once been a member in guiding, and many of those members have wonderful memories from guiding, and it's those memories that we will need to target, and those people that we can target when we recruit new members and new volunteers and new leaders. And now I will hand over to Helen, who will tell a bit more about the situation in UK and Gloucestershire, what kind of solutions they have been finding for these problems and these questions. Please, Helen.
Hello everybody, my name's Helen. My role in guiding is particularly working with the 14 to 25 age group, and for me I find this a fascinating age group to work with because of all of those issues which we've picked up on. This is a period of very significant change for young people. So many things are happening in their lives. I think it's great that something like guiding can exist as something that is continuous through that period if they wish. But as we've seen, there can be obstacles to doing that. And I'd quite like to hear on the chat any additional things you think you're observing in your organisations, above those ones that we've included, where you think it's a cause of young members stepping away from guiding in that sort of 10-year period, 11-year period between 14 and 25. We do quite a lot in terms of talking to young people. We have regular sessions at our planning meetings where we bring in young people to talk about guiding and how they would like to see it changing here locally in Gloucestershire. But also I've taken the opportunity to talk to young members from well beyond this area about the issues that face them. I went to a conference late last year which was mainly young women between 18 and 30, and I spent some time talking to them all in small groups about why they were still in guiding, because they were, and that's a very positive thing. I wanted to know what they felt it was that had made a difference to them and meant they were still in guiding when many of their peers were not. Now, I have to say, of course, because they were in guiding, they were more likely to give me a positive set of answers. This is not a conversation I've had with as many people who've left guiding in this most recent piece of research. But talking to this group, there were four things that stood out. First, it was about having had a really great time as a young member, and that can have started as young as 5, 6 or 7 years old. They could talk excitedly about what they had done in Brownies. They talked about how they'd been developed through guiding, they'd been patrol leaders, they'd been given the opportunity to try new things, and they'd been well supported by great leaders. And that, of course, is what guiding here should all be about. But they also commented that they liked the fact that guiding had given them the chance to develop the skills they would need to be a future leader. And this had happened in a variety of different ways. But again, it had started fairly young for a lot of these members, and they had grown those skills over a number of years. And I'll talk in a minute about some of the ways they had done that, and in which UK Guiding tries to help them. They liked the fact they had been recognised and rewarded throughout the time as a young person, and as they had grown into their leadership roles as a young adult leader. They had actually been given awards, they had completed different kinds of challenges, and had had the chance, for example, to go abroad or to have represented their area at an event. They really felt that they had been recognised, and people valued them for who they were. And then finally, it was the fact that where they were doing their guiding, the fact that they were 16, 17, 18 or 19 had not been an obstacle to them actually being able to take on leadership roles. So these are the things which came out. And it then got me to thinking, well, how does the UK respond to these four issues and make the chance of a young person staying on in guiding as high as it possibly could be? Sometimes I've looked at what we do in guiding and thought, well, it all seems a bit of a mix. But when I now step back and look at it from this perspective, it starts to make much more sense to me. So my first question really is, how great is the A14 to 18? I mean, how do you rate yours? How recently was it reviewed or refreshed? Does it feel contemporary and modern? Or is it very much as you might have had it when you were a younger person? When do you start allowing girls and young women to gain recognised qualifications? Something that they can use either in their journey through life or in their journey through guiding. Sometimes this doesn't become formally recognised until they're adults and begin to qualify as adult leaders, but perhaps there are opportunities to recognise what they do in leadership much younger than that. So again, it's just a prompt to get you thinking. Do you have any leadership qualifications a girl can earn before she's 14? Or in those intermediate periods before she becomes an adult? It may not be a leadership role such that she is permitted to take responsibility for 30 girls going to a residential weekend, but are the ways in which you recognise the fact that they have grown leadership skills and are using leadership skills at an earlier stage. So we've got a lot of ways that we do it when I look around. The first time, you know, as a leader, you'll be maybe a sixer in Brownies, perhaps at the age of 8 or 9. But that's in a very supportive and quite limited environment. And it's with girls who are part of your own group. But at 12 in the UK, you can become a helper. So you've gone on to guides, you've perhaps been there a couple of years, and you can go back and help with a younger age group, with the Brownies, or in our case the Rainbows, our 5 and 6-year-olds. As a helper, you're very much being managed by the leader of the Brownies or the Rainbows, and your responsibilities might be quite limited. But you would be expected, for example, to sit and help a girl learn to say her promise, perhaps to help youngsters who've got difficulties with reading or writing to follow an activity, to help clear up, to talk to girls, to be there as an additional pair of hands. And if you're a Brownie or a Rainbow Helper, you get a badge to say so. At 14, we begin to formalise the skills that are being gained by a young person working with a younger age group. And we have a thing called the Young Leader Qualification. Now this is a programme which takes about 2 years to do, and it is a very structured programme, and as the girls gain in confidence and gain in understanding of what it means to be a leader and what it means to be a leader in guiding, they can work towards a qualification. And this qualification mirrors the adult leader qualification, but at a slightly simpler level. But some of the things they can do between 14 and 18, they can use for their full adult leader qualification. Once they're 16, they can start working on their adult leader qualification because, again, with it taking about 2 years to do, by the time they hit their 18th birthday and they are legally an adult and therefore able to take on that responsibility as an adult, they can actually have completed it. I was looking on Facebook today and there's a girl on there, on the Girl Guided group, very confidently and happily saying, I had my birthday 3 days ago and I've now got my leadership qualification. And I think that's absolutely great. It shows how much they care and feel it's a great thing to have done by the time they're 18. Another route into gaining skills that certainly transfer as a leader are peer education. And I'm sure, like many of you, you use some of the peer education resources, like Free Being Me or Stop the Violence, which give our young people the opportunity to begin to develop the leadership skills to take a group of girls they don't know on a journey into a topic that they have gained the skills and knowledge to deliver. And again, I think it's really important we recognise our peer educators and use what they have gained through that to help them gain their adult leadership qualification. We also collaborate with other youth organisations. A lot of our schools offer the Duke of Edinburgh scheme, which is again a personal development scheme, but one component of it is the need to give community service and or to volunteer. And we very much welcome girls coming to us through the Duke of Edinburgh scheme to volunteer. They only have to do 6 months, if that's just to complete their Duke of Edinburgh scheme. But talking again to some of the girls at this conference, they were saying they actually had only joined us as a Duke of Edinburgh volunteer and had become so interested in what guiding had to offer and the way that they were supported, they had decided to stay on and become a leader in guiding. So again, we don't have to have people who've always been part of guiding. We can offer our opportunities to those outside of guiding too. But what's, again, proved really important talking to this group is nearly all of them valued having somebody to support them, somebody they could turn to personally to help them complete their challenges for the qualifications, or just to help them when they weren't quite sure what to do. Now, in some cases, it turned out these were parents or grandparents or aunts or friends, but in other cases, it was finding somebody that they felt comfortable talking to. And this isn't always a much older leader. So in some cases, they really liked the fact they had a mentor that was only 2 or 3 years ahead of them and actually understood that when they were busy doing exams or had school commitments, it was hard. And they could talk honestly to them about that. So for us, I think that's another thing we're learning is we need to find exactly the right mentors to work with our younger adults and our older young leaders to help them gain their qualifications. So my second question is, the second thing that they cared about was this opportunity to be recognised, rewarded and supported. Again, I'll give you a moment or so to think. What I'll then do is share some of our ideas, and perhaps you can then add to them ways in which you're able to support young people and recognise and reward them. Okay, could we move on to the next slide then? Okay, so as somebody in a leadership role in our county, but also as an individual leader, one of the things I am often asked to do is help our young leaders and our senior section members take what they've done in guiding and interpret it in a way which makes it useful for what they're trying to do outside of guiding, particularly sort of when they're 17 and applying for university. And any time they're applying for jobs, even if it's just a Saturday job in a shop, very often they come back having been to their university interview and say, when I was there, all they wanted to do was talk about guiding. I thought I was going to be talking all about the things I'd done at school. And my answer to that is, well, lots of people have probably put a huge amount of information about their academic qualifications, but actually how many of them are saying they give up one night a week or a weekend a year, they work with young people, they help develop young people, they work in a team of leaders. And it's actually taking that qualification book and turning it around and saying, well, what have you done as part of guiding, which is a real life skill that you can take on and use in a job or to improve how you come across when you go to university to interview. Next. I write references for them. Even 3-4 years after a girl has moved on from my unit, they will often come back to me and say, now I'm applying for a job. Can you say something about me if somebody wants a reference? And of course I can. I've known these girls very well, maybe for 4 or 5 years. They may have had a role within my unit of looking after the money for the group. Well, if they're going for a job where that may be handling money, even if, for example, a job in a shop, I can say, I know this girl is honest and trustworthy and is good with money. But I can also write about the things they have done and the experiences they've had, which I believe help them to stand out from the crowd when they apply for that job. Of course, we have badges and certificates which are linked to our own programme, and I can award those. And on the back of all of our awards, again, it actually says what the young person has done to achieve that award, not in very detailed terms, but in life skills terms. So again, when they're trying to put together a way of interpreting what they've done, they've actually got vocabulary there that they can use. They've got certificates they can take to an interview and say, look, it says I did this. Next. I can put them forward for young people's awards in guiding or in the community. Quite often there are opportunities to nominate young people for awards for things that they have done. And I think we sometimes underestimate and undervalue what we do in guiding. And again, to say this young person has given up this much time, she's mentored an individual, she's helped a group, she has supported 20 girls to learn a new skill. These things really stand out when they go to be considered for an award. And I'm always delighted to see a young person being given an award for something that they have done within guiding by the wider community. And of course I can put them forward for national guiding opportunities. So we have young people who can sit on our national council, who can sit on regional committees, who can be advocates, who can become spokespeople, can sit on a committee when there's something new being planned. For example, our current 100th year birthday was very largely planned by young people. So I see talent in my area and I can try and encourage them and support them in putting an application in to take up some sort of a national or even an international guiding opportunity. Holly, who is on the teleconference or the conference today, because I invited her to join us, is from our county in Gloucestershire and she sits on the National Council. And she's very keen to take this work on working with young adults forward. So I thought it would be great for her to sit in and join us today. So the next thing is, how can we support young people through these life-changing years? What is it we can do differently than we might do with adults who are settled in their families, with a career that's well established, who are probably living in the same town for a period of time? This isn't what we said, as Heidi said earlier, this is not what it's like if you're a young person. So what can we do differently to support them at that time? And again, I'd just like to share some of the things we're trying to do to keep these young women connected to guiding through this very turbulent time. So you've already heard, we try to help them complete their leadership qualification before they leave the county. And we do this in a variety of ways. Obviously they can work with a unit and they can take a couple of years doing it, but we also offer what we call our fast track program, where we give them the chance to come for just a weekend or part of a weekend and complete a large part of the qualification with their peers or with other leaders who are just starting out. So again, it just helps them tick off those last 3 boxes that they didn't think they'd ever get done because they were busy doing exams. But we give them a great weekend. It's a fun weekend, it's fully catered, they eat well, they have great trainers who come and help them, and they can get on and get that leadership qualification finished. In the UK, that qualification is then valid for life. That doesn't mean they don't need to update their training, and things like first aid and police checks have to be redone at periods throughout their time, but they don't have to start again in 3 years' time when they finish university. They can go to their first job or new town and say, look, I'm a leader, and of course then they're welcome. Even if young people don't choose to go through the leadership qualification route by the time they're 18, we really encourage the leaders of those units to stay connected to those 18-year-olds and up to 25, and to come and take part as they did previously with that unit whenever they can. So they maybe will come to a Christmas party, they will perhaps go during the summer to a camp or an event that's on. They may not do any other guiding throughout the year while they're away at university, but we try and keep them connected to that unit throughout the time that they are away. Again, it's that keeping a little link to them and saying we're still interested in what you're doing that can make such a difference. And particularly those who've been working on their leadership, we encourage their leaders to invite them to come back and help at specific events, not least because the leaders may want the extra help. So when you're having your summer camp or a Brownie weekend away, perhaps that's one opportunity to bring your young leader back and say, come and join us. It's a more fun part of guiding and we still need you and we still value you. And in previous discussions I've talked about things like holiday brownies. These are standalone programs that we run that we can use young adults to come and plan and run entirely on their own because they've got their leadership qualifications, and all we ask for is a few days a year on that. Next slide. of course, sometimes we need to help them connect where they've gone to university. One of the fun things I do every year is go to our local university, and I put up a stand with all the guiding information, and I welcome and I have conversations with young people who are arriving from somewhere else to come and study in Gloucestershire. And by having guiding stands at all the university fairs, that means that we can give them the opportunity to connect back into guiding while they're away studying. But it can also be when they've moved to a new job. The way that the UK database works, they can go onto the database and say, I'm looking for a unit in this new town or new area that I've moved to, and guiding will go and find them. We have social media groups for our young people. They're welcome to join the adult ones, but we also have a separate one for that age group. And on that we post everything that's happening that they might be interested in taking part in. So when we're going to have a ball, a dance in October, that's going out on our social media site now. So young people heading to university or at university can say, actually, I'd like to come back for that weekend. It would be great to catch up with my friends. And all these connections mean that they're still in guiding, they're still relevant to us, and we can still engage with them. We send them the monthly newsletters. We don't take people off the newsletter distributions. So again, they can still see what's happening back home. Sometimes we can ask them to take on roles they can do entirely online. So I've got one of my commissioners in this area is at university. She works in partnership with another commissioner, and Lisa does all the online stuff, all the record keeping and the paperwork from university, whilst Lynn does a lot of the face-to-face things during term time. Over the holidays they work together on things. But they've found that's a brilliant way to job share, because Lynn is not so comfortable and keen on computers and the internet. Lisa just loves them, and she can do it late at night. Very often these things can be done quite flexibly. We've also had young people who are on our PR and marketing team. That's all they do, but they're brilliant at it because they understand social media. Could we just go back one, please, Zoe? So again, there are lots of different things that young people can do. We shouldn't always be thinking the only thing we would value them for is being able to run a weekly meeting. So could they be a treasurer dealing with the finance? Can they take on jobs which are very occasional? Can they do things just online? But we also need to make sure we continue to make guiding fun for them. We don't just ask for work. We also make sure they know about things they can do that they will enjoy doing. Thank you, Zoe. So we talk about a regular commitment from leaders, but I believe that does not have to mean weekly. I think this can mean all sorts of things. I'm happy if I have a young person. Can we click on, Zoe? Students, they're only here for 6 or 8 weeks. That's not a normal term, but is it not better to have a unit that runs for 6 to 8 weeks, each 3 times a year, than that doesn't run at all? This is a way for us to get additional leaders in. Peer educators decide totally how much time they give to guiding. They could do 1 meeting a term, they could do 1 meeting a week. That's entirely up to them. We try and organise units or allow units to meet very flexibly, particularly around things like exam times. It's quite common for a unit to not meet for 4 or 6 weeks at exam times, so girls don't have the additional stress of do I go to guides or do I do my revision? And that works just fine. They come back refreshed and ready for more guiding. So I think the answer to this age group, more than anything else, is for us as adults and as people who are looking at future programs, looking at our structures, looking at the way we manage guiding, to be flexible. If we can hang on to them through those few difficult years, we've probably got some of our very best future leaders. So if they can offer help once a week, that's great. If they can come in once a term and help a unit or to do something that the leader otherwise couldn't do, that's fabulous. Holiday Brownies, come once a year, give us 3 days. If all they can do is weekends because they're in that new job and actually their time they can give to guiding is on a weekend, great, let's do it. We need to let young women be engaged with guiding as it suits them. But it's not always easy. We know even here it's quite hard sometimes to find a way to recognise this time that they give on our systems. It's all too easy to take them off the system and say they're not doing ordinary guiding anymore, so we'll delete them. Let's look at how we build flexibility into our systems too, and the way we manage and work with young people to enable all this to work. So that's sort of my view. So I think we've now got sort of 15 minutes for conversation and discussion.
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much, Helen. There has been a very lively debate already on the chat box that has started, but now, quite as Helen said, now we have some 15 minutes for actual discussion online. So please do put forward questions directly to Helen or myself, either by speaking or still we will be having an eye on the chat box too. So any means you feel comfortable with, please. So Helen, one thing that has come up quite a few times already in the chat box, and not only on this chat box, but actually when we've talked to so many different guides from all around the world, there has been a tremendous interest in having getting gains for your CV or for your resume from different kind of tasks in guiding. What do you think, Helen? What kind of tasks can we actually put on CV? What kind of qualifications actually does guiding make us ready for? What experience do you have on this work for the CV and resume thing?
Well, I think the biggest thing we can talk about is the leadership skills that they have gained, and that leadership includes listening skills, collaborative skills, working with other adults. It is taking responsibility for risk, for finance, for behaviour. It's around having a very clear set of values about who we are and what we do. I think we give a lot of girls the opportunity to speak, sometimes in a public setting, sometimes just within a small group. We've sometimes given them the chance to chair meetings. And when I think to going into the workplace, how many of those skills I have used back at work, I think it's remarkable. I was talking to somebody online this week and they were saying, how do you translate some skills? And I said, think about putting up a big patrol tent. If you're the patrol leader, within your group of maybe 6 or 8 people, you've got some who've done it before, some for whom this is the first time. You've got people who want to learn. You've got limited equipment, so you've got to work out how you're going to share out the equipment for putting the tent up. It's okay to experiment. Every time we put a tent up on a piece of ground, it's a new piece of ground. So have we found exactly the right place for it? Can we put our pegs in where we want? Having that dialogue, thinking about that. I mean, it's just like doing a project. You've got to take account of all the variables, work out a solution and deliver a solution with a team. So I think there's lots and lots of things that we do every week in guiding, which so many other young people don't do. And I think sometimes it's very easy to forget that what we take for granted is actually a very significant skill. But again, we need to talk to girls about that during the time they're doing it, so they recognise that they've gained a skill as well. But they genuinely are business skills to me.
Thanks, Helen. Then there is actually another question from Heather, a more technical questions about when you try to remain connected to these young women throughout the year, are they considered full-fledged members, or are they some kind of subtype of membership or something else? What is the role and status of these girls throughout the whole year?
They are always members if they are part of a group, wherever it is. Our database, on our database, where you're working and the role you have in guiding is recorded. So if you're working with a Brownie group at your university location, you will be registered as a full member with that Brownie group. If you are just helping your Brownie group back home, you will be on the database connected to your back home unit. Now we do have a problem, and this is something I think guiding still needs to address in the UK, is a reduced rate for students, because we have to pay an annual membership fee for everybody who is a member, and that can be a struggle for some small units to cover the costs of an additional person. One way we can help out with that is we sometimes register people like peer educators as a county resource, as a county member, and the county, which is a much bigger entity with bigger resources behind them, will then pay their membership fee for that period. So technically they are a member. The logistics of actually getting them paid for each year is trickier, but that's why, as I say, I think we need to build that flexibility more deeply into our systems to recognise that, you know, as a student they probably can't contribute themselves financially, but you know, they are so valuable both today and into the future that we should be looking at a minimum of a reduced rate. And I don't know, do other people manage to do that? I'd love to be able to go back to guiding in the UK and say, well, they do that somewhere else.
Alison has put forward a very good comment about a possible option for online programs for those girls who actually want to register as individuals if they do not have a troop. Have you, Helen, had any experience on online programs where girls actually don't meet live?
There is a system we call loans, which would allow anybody up to the age of 25 to register as an individual, and they would just be then extremely loosely connected into guiding. But I think the majority of people, they are connected to something. It's the thing they do most of, or the place they do most of it. So they could, for example, just register as a guider for a town, a leader within a town, and they are then used on an occasional basis when there's a need in that town, but they are registered to something, not just as an individual member on the system. We are actually structured such that everybody is connected to something, but it doesn't have to be an individual troop. It can be a bigger group than that.
There is one experience I'd like to share, now seeing that we have a few participants also from the Arab region, because I know when we talk about the importance of recognizing and rewarding our volunteers, and we are seeking different ways of how to reward and recognize our volunteers for the tremendous fruitful work they do for us. all the time. So I know that in Arab region they organize these annual big reward ceremonies where I think, if not all, but quite a few of the volunteers are rewarded with medals or diplomas from the guide organization, and that's already one way of really rewarding way for the volunteers to be recognized in front of everybody else and thanked for their for what they have done for guiding the past year or the past months.
I've picked up another question from Heather about the communication with groups and their participation in peer education. Is it decentralized down to communities? Again, it varies, and I think that's a good thing. There are communications direct to senior sections, so this age group 14 to 25, which come not just from our local area but also from the county, and they can get communications direct from the region as well. If they're on our database as a young leader, they also get a national information comes to them. All of the social media groups are obviously managed by somebody. Usually people are invited into a group because they've taken on a role, and then they can communicate as they wish. Peer education, again, each area has a peer education coordinator, and they will look after that group. Our peer educators in the county meet together from time to time, discuss how they've been getting on, what they've learned, what's been changing for them. So they're supported by our youth, we call it the youth participation group, because we see that as one of the different ways in which youth participate in our organisation. So they are supported to plan their events or to record what they've done, but they manage what their time they're willing to offer for themselves. Paola, you've asked what we have for making strong the young leader group. I think, again, it varies around different parts of the United Kingdom and in different areas. In some places, our young leaders are very much working solely within the Brownies or the Rainbows or the Guides with the other adult leaders there, and that is kind of their guiding sphere. We still have a very active programme, which is not a young leader programme for 14s to 25s, which is like, we call it Rangers. It's that programme that's like Guides, but bigger, better, more exciting, more led by the young people themselves. Because we know not everybody does want to be a young leader. Sometimes what they want at that age group is the fun, the excitement, the camps, the trips. So it's important, I think, that we continue to have an organisation open to that age group, which I say you could call grown-up guides, doing more sophisticated activities, but for that age group. But I think things like peer education is becoming more interesting to girls. They like to feel useful, they like to feel that they're making a difference, and peer education is a super way to do that as well. I really also like the comment that's just come in from Alison about these short-term projects. Again, I think this is we forget that sometimes if people can just give a couple of weeks or a few hours over 6 weeks, the value they can give can be remarkable. It isn't about signing up for life. We need to be very happy to say thank you and let them walk away as much as we're welcoming them on board if they can just offer something, or if we can offer them something that helps them with their university course. We've just put out on social media to our young people, are you doing marketing and communications as part of your degree? We'd love to help you, because projects you could use through guiding to help you with your degree course. Real hands-on opportunities to make a difference. You can then report back or write up for your university courses, and that might be just a one-off thing once in 3 years, and I think that's a great way to use skills and knowledge as well.
Thank you so much, Helen, for your insights and inspiring experiences as well, because now we know that you have tried it and it has worked in so many ways. And thank you all dear participants. You have been massively active. It's good to hear from your experiences too, and your ideas and thoughts and what has worked for you, because it's this kind of sharing that can give the positive energy for all of us, and we can find ways to new solutions and innovative ways for delivering guiding and reaching ultimately growth. I want to invite you also to the Community Hub for Growth discussion board on volunteerism. We can there, and you can continue discussing on the chat over there if you have more further ideas you want to share, more further comments and remarks you want to make. But otherwise, I want to thank you all so much for your participation today. Have a nice day, have a good night, have a good morning, whatever your time zone is, and I hope to meet you up sometime again. Thanks. Goodbye.